Feminism in pop culture didn't die. It got rebranded. These days, it sells soap made from bathwater and poses on all fours on an album cover that alludes to a dog's nickname. Just kidding. That's not feminism, but feminism's scary doppelganger, feminine empowerment. We're told that this is what empowerment looks like. That if it's her choice, it must be feminist, right? Sadly, choices don't exist in a vacuum. They exist in a marketplace. One where the currency is still the female body. Sure, it starts with her body, but it ends with ours. Because every hypersexualized image repackaged as empowerment doesn't just reflect her autonomy, it reshapes how women are seen, valued, and expected to perform, all while men are still keeping the standards low for each other. Because let's be honest, when 1,000 men line up to sleep with an OnlyFans creator, or when a woman's body becomes her brand, it's not the patriarchy that's crumbling, it's just evolving. When the system rewards visibility through objectification, is it really liberation, or just a prettier leash? Welcome to The Social Pomegranate, a channel where I yap about film, pop culture, and other zeitgeist topics. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, and without further ado, let's bust some myths about modern-day feminism. When Sweeney announced the release of her bathwater soap, I felt like I had heard that before somewhere, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. Then I found out that Belle Delphine had done the same thing before. And it made me wonder, what possesses people to partake in such a disturbing trade-off? The fact that Sweeney said it was her idea seemed to get people off of the back of Dr. Squatch. But here's my take. It doesn't matter that it was her idea if the effect is still the sexualization of the female body, because Sydney is not the only woman in the world for her choice to start and end there. Female objectification is still very present in pop culture, even with musicians. However, the general idea is still that it doesn't matter what singers or actresses do, because it doesn't affect the general perception of society on women. But it does. Sex sells. And the people who use that marketing strategy, knowing full well the larger implications that it has on gender, stereotyping, femininity, performance, and whatnot, do it because it helps them gain more capital. Therefore, people think that inherently having capital means having power. However, the conversation is more nuanced than that, and we also need to consider how these representations of women in positions of weakness, vulnerability, and submission impact the association to the larger female population. I enjoy some of Sabrina's music. She's definitely got some bops, and I think she's a good singer, but I noticed this about her branding, that there has always been this idea that Sabrina Carpenter is for the girls and Sweeney is for the male gaze. While I definitely agree that a lot of the things that Sweeney does are for the male gaze, and she doesn't feel as relatable or funny or witty as Sabrina does, I still think that Sabrina also retains most of the stereotypes about the perfect femininity in her presentation. By that, I mean her outfits, her hair, her overall style catered to a lot of the image we've been sold as the feminine ideal. Her visual persona doesn't challenge that norm at all, but rather some of the things she speaks in interviews feel more feminist.
Ever been online when people go completely take your words and turn them into something different?
Yeah.
Man, that's probably gonna happen in this one too, but it's okay.
What, to me?
No, to me. Oh my gosh, you'll be fine. You're a man. It'll be fine.
Her branding also has a lot of 50s nostalgia, which worryingly enough has become very popular in the media, but her feminist lyrics in some of her songs have overall labeled her as somebody who understands the female experience. Like, please, 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 it's such a valid song. Sabrina's new album cover did exactly what it set out to do. It got people talking. But at what cost to the wider representation of relationships, inequality, and even domestic violence, as somebody is clearly pulling on her hair in this image while she is in a position of inferiority. This is not at all an imagery that goes well with her brand, and people are calling her out for it on the internet.
Sabrina, girl, I love you, but get off the fucking ground!
Somebody even made this image as a counter album cover, and honestly I couldn't love it more. There are a lot of content creators who, rightfully so, felt intrigued to speak up about how dangerous this portrayal of women is, especially given how misogynistic young men have become already. Plus, the implication that the album is called Man's Best Friend and she's on all fours makes her be interpreted as the B word, which for long has been a very negative way of referring to a woman. However, many female singers have since then reclaimed the word and referred to it in context of empowerment. I love this comment. Everyone's saying it's satire, but the thing with satire is that in order to be effective, it has to be distinguishable from the thing that it's intending to criticize. Like, yes, if this album cover was reversed, then we could have said it was satire. And if we want to criticize patriarchy, then the number one thing we have to do is to not partake in an imagery that is very reminiscent of those sexist ads in the 1950s. You know which ones I'm talking about. And let's be for real, if the aim of this album was to get people talking no matter the imagery, whilst not inherently a very socially ethical concept, her team could have done so many other things. Like if Sabrina posed on her album cover without makeup or with visible armpit hair, then you would have definitely got people talking. But that wouldn't fit well with her brand. But being in this position and clearly weaker, smaller than a man does? Sure. That doesn't take away from the fact that Sabrina, like any other woman on the internet, still suffers from misogynistic comments about her appearance. Like this video claiming she hasn't shaved her armpits in I don't know what performance. I can think of anybody who embodies this like female version of femininity more than Sabrina Carpenter, but people will still find a needle in the haystack if they want to shame her for not being feminine enough. Of course, female artists can do and express themselves in whichever ways they want. But I don't understand this desperation for everything to be labeled as feminist. Not everything is feminist, and that's fine because feminism gives women the choice to partake or not in this fight against inequality or gender roles. But trying to rebrand inherently misogynistic imagery, sexist beauty standards, and objectification of the female body into a feminist statement is not a move. Y'all just need to accept that some things are sexist or perhaps anti-feminist, and we can all move on instead of trying to accommodate in this movement beliefs and imagery that fundamentally conflict with the core principles. Because just like this creator said, and I'm happy that somebody else is seeing it too, if Sabrina Carpenter's album cover was feminist, then men would have been so mad about it and claimed she's gone woke too. And I don't doubt that there will be some feminist songs in Sabrina's new album, but that doesn't really change everything in my opinion. I think in many ways what is described as feminist nowadays is in fact not the feminism I grew up knowing, which is still disregarded largely because it's not digestible enough for the masses. Speaking of masses, how on earth did Bonnie Blue ever make it through sleeping with 1,000 men? That's like if you need to fool yourself 1,000 times in order to think that the guy you're gonna be sleeping with next is attractive at all. Also, this must be massively unhealthy for her. But see, I don't like the fact that she's taking most of the hits for this one, because let's not forget how desperate 1,000 men had to be. Like, they yap about how women only go for the top 1% of males. Meanwhile, it is them, the men in real life, who all line up for the same type of woman who fits within their beauty criterias. And not only that, then they go out into the world and are probably giving people STDs or something now, I don't know. They scam on some poor girl.
You do not come to a party at my house with Gretchen and then scam on some poor innocent girl right in front of us 3 days later. She's not interested. Do you want to have sex with him? No, thank you. Good.
We should just make these men's names public at this point and expose the walking red flags, but I'm drifting off from the subject here. Thing is, there are always going to be guys who are willing to buy Sweeney's bathwater and line up with 1,000 other men to sleep with the same girl. However, as women, we should fight for collective liberation over individualistic and temporary benefits gained through capital or the attention economy. Because women as a class don't benefit when rich, privileged women are willingly objectifying themselves and creating an unfavorable portrayal of women as a group. Because as feminists of the late 1960s have stated, the personal is political. Of course, the highly sexualized equals empowered trope has been around for a while with female celebrities, but I think the massive audiences and visibility that people like Sabrina, Sweeney and Bonnie have is what has led to this discourse starting. And I'm not blaming them for falling for this patriarchal rebranding of female empowerment, but I'm saying that their teams need more critical thinking, especially with how much tension there seems to be right now between men and women either way. Actually, does Bonnie Blue even have a team at this point? I don't know. It's all very unclear to me. Anyways, you still have to ask yourself whose interest you're serving. I just hope that this is some sort of odd stunt, but hey, thanks to feminism, Sabrina and Sydney and even Bonnie can do whatever they want. I just really hope that this trend of objectification doesn't become more popular, especially with how younger generations have so much access to internet nowadays anyway. But thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks for listening to my rambling and my yapping, and yeah, make sure you subscribe and see you later. Bye!